welcome to the Animal Training Academy Making Ripples podcast show, the show where we share the stories of the ripple-making extraordinaires with behavior nerd superpowers who make up the Animal Training Academy membership. I'm your host and one of the happiness engineers at Animal Training Academy, Shelley Wood from Drop Your Jaws Dog Training in Cape Girardeau, Missouri in the United States. We're absolutely thrilled and grateful to have you here with us today. Make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss a single episode. This show is brought to you on behalf of the Animal Training Academy membership. So if you like the conversations in these episodes, then we want to invite you to continue them with like-minded people in the ATA membership, which you can find out more about at www.atamember.com. Within the membership, you can get access to twice monthly live web classes, the back catalog of previous web class replays, plus a huge library of videos and projects to help you problem solve your training challenges. And we're a sociable bunch with an exclusive private Facebook group and forums area. It's like a Netflix social media platform for animal behavior geeks. Today, it is my great pleasure to welcome Josephine Linderstrom to the show. Josephine is a Swedish trainer who, together with her dog Casper, is on a continuous journey of learning and growing. After joining ATA in 2017, she decided to get educated and train professionally. In 2020, she became a mom and is now learning how to navigate parenthood with a reward-based mindset. She is currently in the process of making training her full-time job and brings with her experiences from working with neurodivergent people in different settings, most recently kids in school. This has shaped her to place a lot of focus on clarity and getting the antecedents right to set both dog and owner up for success. Welcome, Josephine. It's great to have you here with us today.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
I'm really excited to have you join us. I think that when we caught up a few weeks ago to talk about this recording, I mentioned to you then that, as I remember it, you are the first person who commented on one of my posts in the Animal Training Academy community. And I don't know about you, but for me, it's a really vulnerable position to put myself in, to put things online sometimes and ask for feedback about those things. And I just remember you being so generous with your time and so objective and kind with your feedback that I just really appreciated that. So thank you so much for that.
That is my pleasure. First off, thank you for saying that. Though it's such a cool feeling that, you know, something that you do makes other people feel good, and then they remember that and continue to feel good when they think back on that thing. I think that's such a cool thing, and I am so happy that I could do that. But I also remember that post, and I remember Mika being intense, and you know, it was way back when, right, in the WhatsApp group. But I can definitely also relate to the feeling of like being vulnerable when you post things online. I still get that feeling. I still think it's hard to ask for feedback, for example. We were talking earlier about asking for feedback in tracking, right? I'm still not over myself in that sense. Like, I still think it's a little bit difficult. So yeah, kudos to you for doing that. And also like doing it when, you know, entering a new community can be a really vulnerable position. And it's brave to ask for help, I think.
Well, thank you for making it easy for members like me to ask for help when we need it. I really appreciate that. And yeah, it is funny. I do remember it. It's been, I'm going to say 3-ish years, maybe. I'm not sure, but it's been a while. I do remember it very clearly, and it did immediately attach good feelings to Josephine for me. So it's wonderful to have you here today to talk a little bit more and get to know each other a little bit better and share your goodness with the wider world. So thank you for joining us. So, to get us started today, I wondered if you could talk a little bit about your experience as a new mom this past year and maybe share with us just a little bit about that story, what it's been like for you being a new mom, and maybe how some of your previous training with your lovely dog, Casper, has influenced your behavior in your role as a mom, and maybe some of how your experience as a mom has influenced your behavior with Casper.
Yeah, it's becoming a parent is such a wild thing in and of itself, right? It's crazy how much it has affected my life. And also becoming a parent in the middle of a pandemic was kind of intense because it's like, you know, you're kind of on your own in that setting. Like you can't really get a lot of help from people because you had to isolate and things. So what I've done is just, you know, I've just applied the skill set that I already had that I've acquired through dog training on, you know, parenting. It's been it's so far so good. I'd like to think, at least my baby seems to be cool with it. Sometimes, like one example, I think that's like it immediately connects to my style of training and being interested in errorless learning and that sort of thing has been to like the way that I have, I'm saying that I have built independence, but I haven't. He's grown and become more independent. He's 8 months old now. But in the beginning, I would read a lot of advice about how important it was to let him be on his own, right? And to have like tummy time and floor time on his own. But he didn't like that. He would cry and he would want to be carried everywhere. And he would want to be on me or my husband all of the time because he was a little baby, right? And I felt like I didn't want to just leaving it in the playpen and let him fuzz it out. Just didn't feel right at all. So I just wouldn't do it. I felt very comfortable in my decision to pick him up when he said he wanted to, or just plain flat out not leave him there at all until he was like 5 months and started to actually play with the things in there, right? And like some of the advice that you get as a new parent is like, oh, you have to let them fuzz it out, or the frustration is part of it and you have to let them work through it. And I'm like, I've heard this somewhere before. This sounds familiar. This sounds like how some people claim that you should not pay attention to the whining puppy, for example. And I was like, I'm just not gonna do that. And I feel very confident that he's not going to be attached to me forever, even though I don't let him fuzz it out, or like that he's never going to be independent. I feel like that's a developmental thing. And you know what? Now he's at 8 months. He has fantastic independent play. He's super happy for a long time on his own. And that's kind of nice because I get a break. But also, to me, it's like proof of concept. Like you don't have to let them go through the whole extinction thing. Like I wouldn't want to extinguish communication behaviors. Like, I don't know of any context where I would actively want to do that. So yeah, I don't, that's just one of the things, because Casper has taught me that like Casper is relentless in that sense, that he just will not stop. He has way more endurance and patience than I do, right? So for him to teach him to wait behind a gate, that has to be errorless, because if when he started to whine and vocalize, he just wouldn't stop. And it's entirely possible that Harry would have been completely fine, but I was just like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I don't want the associations of frustration with, something that should be fun for him.
That's a great answer. Something you said really stuck out to me when you were talking about Harry. You said, I wouldn't want to extinguish communication behaviors when we were talking about him wanting to, I think, be held and be near you and that sort of thing. And the idea of just letting him fuss it out might be extinguishing some of those communication behaviors. Is that something that you've learned from dog training, the importance of paying attention to communication behaviors?
Definitely. And also, I would say the importance of noticing the subtle communication. Especially since Casper has been just in general such an explosive dog, right? Things would escalate really, really fast with him. So if I didn't pick up on the really subtle stuff, then, that would be a punishing experience for me, because he would just explode at the end of the leash, or get really loud really fast, or, whatever it might be. So I kind of always want to reinforce the subtle, polite, quote unquote, way of communicating. And in the context of, with a baby, I mean, politeness is not really a thing, but I would rather pick him up while he is looking for me with his eyes and maybe making a little bit of noise, rather than have him be super frustrated, whining, crying, right? I would rather, reinforce the less loud behavior with my own behavior, right? With the social reinforcers, I guess.
Makes total sense. I'm curious too, are there things that you have learned in the past year since you've become a pandemic parent? Are there things you have learned in that past year that have, with your relationship with Harry, that have influenced your training and behavior with Casper?
I don't know. Oh, that's a much harder one to answer, because Casper's been around for 8 years and Harry's been around for 8 months. So definitely, I think it's more the other way around. But one thing that I have learned in the past 8 months have definitely been like how to kind of kick into this sort of survival mode almost, right? Like when you're tired and you need to get things to function, like you need to get through the day. Like, how can you make it so that everyone is happy with as little effort as possible, if that makes sense? It sounds like I'm the laziest person in the world, but it's just, you got a newborn, you're home alone, you got a dog that has a lot of energy, and I've had to get inventive with like low effort enrichment and low effort activities for Casper as well as for Harry, but mostly for Casper, because he's not difficult to entertain at all, but like I have to do things with him, right? So one of those things have been the scent work stuff that I posted about in the community, right? Where when I get Harry down for a nap in the stroller, it's just like a walk up and down the road and he's fast asleep. While doing that, after he's asleep, I will hide something on my way back home. And then when it's time for the next nap, or if we're going for a walk, then I take Casper to find it. So like weave in things into the natural flow of the day, and trying to keep everyone content, I guess, is a new skill, because I had so much time on my hands before compared to now. It's really labor intensive to parent. Who would have thought?
I am not a parent, and I cannot imagine how labor intensive it must be. I don't think anybody is going to think you're lazy at all. And I think that sounds really genius and creative to come up with ideas like that. to think about how can I, just like you, I think you said how you can weave things into the natural flow of the day to make sure that everybody is getting their needs met, and to make sure that you have some time to rest as well, which is incredibly important and needed to make sure everybody gets their needs met. Right.
Yeah. And that's also like something that I've learned is that it's like I used to feel kind of guilty for not doing things. But now I've kind of come to a realization that if I don't take care of me, like the rest, everything else is going to have to wait. Because if I don't take care of me first, then nothing else, like Casper or Harry are not going to get their needs met. So it's like, oh, wait, motherhood is not about being super selfless and just giving of yourself endlessly. It's about, or a big part of it is learning self-care, like properly learning to rest and not feel guilty about it, learning to play Breath of the Wild for an hour while the baby sleeps or whatever, right? And not worry so much about the dishes in the sink or whatever, because those will still be there later. I can still do them. They're not going anywhere.
I love it. It sounds like you're learning some really meaningful lessons right now that are going to benefit, or that are benefiting you and the rest of your family. I think if I understand correctly from your bio and from chatting a little bit earlier, you are kind of shifting gears professionally a little bit. Is that correct?
Yeah. So before I left work to be a mom, I worked in school. And I'm not going to go back to working in school. At least that's not the plan currently. Instead, I'm going to be doing the dog training thing and also a little bit of horse training, but mostly dog training thing full time. So that's a crazy and really exciting thing that's happening.
That is super exciting. So we will put this in the show notes, and we may mention it again later as well. But if people wanted to work with you for dog training, how would they get in touch with you, and where could they find out more about your training?
You could just, obviously, you could just write me a PM through Facebook. But also I have a business page called Djurpedagogen, where you can also get a hold of me.
I'm not going to even attempt to.
When I made that name, I was in this position of, should I make it more internationally viable, or should I just make it make sense in Swedish? And I thought, I'm just going to make sense in Swedish. And now I'm like, I'm here with this amazing international network of super cool trainers. And I'm like, oh, damn it, I should have made it in English. But I'm not changing it because I have, it's a fairly established name here. So I guess in the international waters, I will be known as Josefin, probably Josephine Linderstrom. And in Sweden, people mostly know me by Djurpedagogen.
I love the name, and I think it sounds beautiful. I'm not going to attempt to say it. I struggled enough before the show trying to pronounce your name, so I won't attempt the business name. But it's a beautiful name and wonderful. Good to know that people can get in touch with you through that page, and that they can PM you personally. And congratulations! What a very exciting thing to be moving to training professionally full time. Could you share just a little bit about your previous work with us, working most recently, I think you said, with neurodivergent children, and maybe some overlaps there that you see between animal training and the work with those children that you were working with, or vice versa? Absolutely.
So I've been working mostly with kids in grade 2. So they will be 6, 7, 8 years old, and with autism and ADHD. So they would struggle in the school environment, basically, or the school environment wouldn't be conducive to their learning. I don't like to... the way that we talk about these kids so often that, oh, they have all these problems or whatever, or they struggle so much. But it really comes down to the environment not being made with them in mind, if that makes sense. So the environment is made for the kids that can do things like sit still for duration and listen for duration. And that's just not always going to work for everyone. So part of my job was just to create situations where they could learn, basically. So it might be a shorter instruction. It might be providing like gentle redirection, some emotional, I don't know what you call it, but like helping them learn to deal with their emotions in a way that's not violent or aggressive, because that would often be a problem, right? And it's no wonder, because if you think about it, these kids would often be like in this state of extinction, I suppose. Like they would go to school, they would sit in the classroom, and they would just fail for hours on end all day long. It's no wonder they would get mad when recess comes, right? So helping them with strategies, helping them notice when they need breaks, and giving them opportunities to take breaks, that sort of thing. Lots of fun. It sounds really heavy, but I had tons of fun, because a lot of times, we would redesign the lesson to be more fun, honestly. Like I would rather do like the adapted classes as a student, even if I don't have ADHD or autism, because we would be like outside. The instructions would be really short, really concise, kind of no extra fluff around it. Smaller groups, just all over, that's all around, just super fun. Making games out of everything. It's gamification all over the place.
That's really interesting. And definitely there seems to be a lot of overlap there. As I listen to you talk, I'm thinking about a lot of things related to animals and the way that they interact with the world, and that we expect them to interact with the world. You said that when talking about the children, you said something to the effect of the environment not having been made with them in mind. And that makes me think about the environment that we expect our dogs to behave in sometimes, and how often it's not made with our environments, at least here in the States, seem to be made with a certain kind of dog in mind, a really super social, loves everybody sort of dog, rather than some of the dogs that maybe have more challenges sometimes. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it definitely does. And I can agree. The expectations on dogs are just so unreasonable a lot of times. I feel like they're expected to enjoy when random people touch them. I don't enjoy when random people touch me. I would punch them in the face, honestly. Don't. So I can, I'm with Casper on that one. Like, it's fine to growl at people if they approach you just with their hands out. Like, don't get handsy with my dog. But also, one of the examples that I think is interesting when it comes to the environment not being made with dogs in mind is the dog leash. Hear me out, though. Someone somewhere at some point in time, I don't know who or when, but someone decided that a standard dog leash is 180 centimeters or 6 feet long. Why? That's rubbish. I'm sorry, but it's not, it's so short. And dogs want to sniff on their walks. Why is it so short? I don't understand. If we, I don't know if you've seen I made like an illustration years ago showing like the difference in area that the dog gets if you lengthen the leash, because it's not just that they get a couple of extra inches, right? It's that the whole area increases, and it's the relationship mathematically is squared to the length, if that makes any sense. So it's a lot more than you would think. And when we make it shorter, it gets a lot smaller and not just a little bit smaller. So that's one of the things that I think is, it doesn't seem like that being the norm is good for dogs. It's just one of those things that I have unreasonably strong opinions about it, I guess.
I don't think they're unreasonable opinions at all. I completely agree and see where you're coming from. And it makes me think back to the child example that you were giving, and we're talking about the environment not being made with maybe, in the case of children, with children who have certain challenges in mind, or in the case of dogs, with certain dogs who have challenges in mind. But maybe the environment in some cases just isn't made with the best interest or healthiest interest, or I don't know how to best put it, but of all, because there are some dogs who can tolerate a short leash, and there are some children who maybe can tolerate a standard kind of classroom environment. But just like you were talking about, even if you didn't have any additional challenges as a child, you would prefer to be in this type of group that you were working in. So maybe environmental arrangements can be better tweaked for all.
I think so. But it's in the context of school, smaller groups of kids cost more. Having more staff cost more space. It comes down sadly to an economic question a lot of the time. But in terms of dogs, I just don't think, like, for the longest time, I was a dog owner without realizing just how intrusive and limiting loose leash walking was to a dog. Even if I teach it with completely reward-based, just with food, it's still such a limiting thing to expect them to walk on a loose leash that's 180 centimeters long, because I would expect them to adjust their pace according to my pace. Like, have you ever even walked with someone who walks slower than you? Like, their natural pace is a little bit slower. It's so hard. It's so hard to do. Just slow down yourself. Or if the other person is a little bit faster than you, it's like so stressful to keep up, even if it's a small difference. But we expect our dogs to do that. And we also expect them to just walk from A to B in like a straight line. But that's not what dogs, that's not their thing. That's not how they would probably move a lot of the time. They want to stop and explore and kind of enjoy the environment and sniff and do dog things. So I'm like a strong advocate for long leashes and sniffy walks and less loose leash walking training, and more sort of how can we change our behavior and change the environment so that it fits the dog a little better. And it makes sense, because no one I know enjoys loose leash training. Like, it's so relentless. It takes so much time. And you have to do it all the time, and you have to be super consistent. Like, how about we just not do it, or set up so that we don't have to do it as much?
Thank you. I agree. Setups, especially with setups, so that we don't have to do it as much. I do think that, unfortunately, sometimes, especially for those of us who live in a little bit more urban areas, maybe there are times when you need your dog at your side really close to walk with you for a bit, but it doesn't have to be all the time, in this perfect kind of heel position.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be maybe the default all the time. Yeah, I'm not saying don't ever leash train. Just want to make that clear. But maybe not all the walk, all the time, everywhere. And just expect the dog to be less dog-esque, I guess.
Well, thank you for sharing everything so far. It's all been really interesting and a great conversation for me so far. I would like to talk a little bit more specifically about some of your animal training now, though. So I am hoping that you would be willing to share with us about a recent training-related challenge that you have experienced, and maybe talk us through kind of how you worked through it or are working through it, and some of the lessons that you've learned.
So this spring, we were noticing that Casper showed some signs of being in pain, right? So then an x-ray showed that he actually has an extra vertebrae, and he's probably been in pain for a while. He's just really good at hiding it. Our vet hasn't picked up on it, even though he's had his hip x-rayed before, but I guess it's a different angle and things. Anyway, so he is on pain medication and is not allowed to basically have fun anymore, right? It's all low impact kind of activities from now on. So the things that we would be doing, right? Like the crazy wrestling, tug, frisbee, jumping, like the just general whirlwind that would be our training is just no longer a thing. It's no longer an option. It's completely not happening. So we need to replace that with something within the framework of also needing to, do all the other things in life that comes with being a parent and shifting professional gears. And I think I mentioned earlier that scent work has been one of the things, right? Because it's low impact. He's super happy to do it. But one of the problems that I encountered and that I know some other people have encountered as well, that train a lot of, like if you train eye contact as a default, then you kind of give the dog conflicting cues in the setting of, okay, I am standing here looking at you, which always means you should look back at me. Except now I want you to go out and work independently, right? So that has definitely been a challenge. And I felt like I kind of hit a wall where Casper was just, I felt like he wasn't tracking, right? I felt like he was not really, like he didn't know what to do. Like he seemed really confused. And I asked for help, right? So just speaking of that part of being vulnerable, asking for help, I still find that difficult to do. But it helps to have awesome trainer friends who can, when you have a community and you know that you're not going to get judged, it makes it so much easier, right? So I asked for help, and Anne McClune, the one and only, right? She pointed out to me that, are you aware that your torso is pointing in the direction he's going? He's probably following that as a cue, maybe try, stepping to the side, and, gave me some feedback. And I did, and it worked beautifully, right? But there's still some issues of like building that independence is still something we're working on. And I'm finding that I have to raise criteria in very small increments to not mess it up for him, but just becoming more aware of myself, where my body is, and where my body is pointing in relation to where he is something that I've been paying a lot more attention to lately, and I find that it's helping, and I think it's just such a cool thing. And it also reminded me of when I started, like this is just a complete mildly off topic, but when I started to do more bat-like training, where you use your body language to help your dog disengage from triggers, for example, right? So rather than just use verbals and leash pressure, I would use my feet and my body. And I would become, like, we're pretty fluent in that kind of communication right now, when I can just kind of turn away from something and he will also turn away from that thing. So in this, in the setting of, reactive dog, trigger, helping to use my body language to de-escalate a situation, I am super aware of what my body is doing. So I thought I knew what my body was doing in the context of tracking too, but apparently I really had no idea. And I thought that was a super interesting thing. It was like an experience that humbled me a little bit, to be honest. But it's great fun to see how much I still have to learn too.
That is really interesting. And it makes me think back of what you were talking about at the beginning of the episode about noticing those subtle communication behaviors. At the beginning, you were talking about noticing it from the learners who we're working with. But now I hear you talking about noticing your own subtle communication behaviors and how they're being received.
Yeah, and that's so much harder. You have to video yourself, otherwise you're never gonna see it. You need at least one extra pair of eyes to point it out to you. That's what I've learned recently.
Yeah, that's a good lesson because I agree, videoing ourselves is important. But I have found myself watching the same video of me over and over again, and then having one other set of eyes look at it and immediately say, did you notice XYZ? What did you say that Anne said? Did you notice your body is pointing in this direction or your torso is pointing in this direction? I don't remember exactly what, but you're like, I did not notice that. So yes, that extra set of eyes is important.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I quite often find myself being the extra set of eyes. And I'm like, this is so obvious. Like this, like I see this immediately, and it kind of, it's really good, I think, to be on the other end of it, just to see how blind you are to your own actions sometimes, right?
Yeah, very good points. And I agree that Anne McLoone is amazing and a wonderful extra set of eyes to have on anything. So great idea to reach out to her for that help. How long have you been tracking with Casper now? And have you done other scent work with him as well, or mostly just tracking?
So if I remember correctly, I took Anne's tracking course in 2019, I think. And before that, I did a little bit of nose work, just, in the, like, at home, as a form of enrichment, not really having any like sports ambitions, but because of, needing to activate my dogs in some fun way. And it seemed like a cool thing to do. And I don't really do, just out of pure laziness, I don't really do it anymore. Well, not lazy, but out of choosing the path of least resistance. I just can't be bothered with the scents and containers and things. I just use whatever trinkets I happen to have in my pocket and just use that, like it's just easier, right? But I have found that when I started to do nose work, I found that my spontaneous kind of way that I wanted to do it was I'm just going to shape an indication and then back chain towards that. Like that seemed like the most straightforward way to do it from like being a clicker trainer kind of perspective. So then that's what I did, and it worked really well. And then that's also really similar to how I've been tracking with Casper. We haven't really been tracking for 2 years. We had it's like on and off because I struggle to stay on track with anything. I'm all over the place all the time. But it's been so much fun to see him grow into it, because he is a dog. Like, this is something that has massively, I feel, impacted him, not just within the context of tracking, but like more in the bigger picture of him being like a really sensitive to environments, being really vigilant, being like a generally stressed out dog. Who would also never be tired. He would just be like, he would be awake or he would be exhausted and knocked out. He would never be like calm properly. But introducing scent work has made such a massive difference. And I can see him applying the skill of putting his nose down in situations outside of tracking. And that is such a cool thing. Where like in situations where before he would just stare like this, just looking for things and being worried, he will now put his head down and sniff instead. And he wouldn't do that before we started to really do tracking and scent work. So that's a really cool thing. And it's something that I incorporate now when I work with reactive dogs. I'm like, we should probably, might help to practice the skill of scenting in like a safe, reward-based framework so that they can apply that skill in other contexts. And it's a fantastic thing.
That is really cool. It makes me think of building our own kind of creativity and behavioral repertoire by building just additional skills, and how then sometimes when we have those additional skills, we're able to use them in context where before maybe we only had one thing that we always would do. So kind of makes me think of that when you're talking that just building additional skills, and maybe possibly especially scent related skills can help a dog to have more things to choose from when they want to respond to something in the environment.
Yeah, just building, like you said, building their behavioral repertoire. And I think it's funny when we talk about repertoires. It sounds like it's like a theater thing, right? But yeah, and I think for us humans, I think it's super cool to see where people come from when they enter animal training, if they've been doing other things before, and what they've been up to, and what kind of skill sets they bring with them, and like what other things they like to do. Like I talked a bit with Peggy about this. Like she does music, right? And there's a lot of rhythm in her training. Like there's and that rhythm makes for a really predictable loop, and it's really elegant in my opinion. I love it. And a while ago, I posted in the Facebook group about observational skills and drawing, right? So I like to draw from life, and it's just something that I like to do. So that has helped me observe, like just training my eye to look at things in an objective way. Because if you want to draw something, then you have to kind of let go of your ideas of what it is and to just draw like what you see. Like that's the whole skill, really, like drawing what you see instead of what you think you see. It makes, like, it sounds super lofty and out there, but it's really it makes sense when you do it.
It makes total sense to me. And I feel like you keep bringing us back to the idea of noticing those subtle communication and other behaviors, right? When you're drawing, you're developing really good observational skills that could help you with that sort of thing.
Yeah, probably the two are probably connected, I would say. I tend to get really detail oriented and like get hung up on some like the smallest things when I draw. And then I'll just draw the thing that I am interested in, super, super detailed. And then I'll just let the rest of the drawing be kind of blurry because I'm just not interested in drawing. That's kind of my, but then I learn the details of the thing that I'm interested in, right? Like it could be a hand, or it could be like the pose, like how the weight is distributed, or it could be the way of the fabric falls, or it could be just any, like I tend to kind of zone in on some little detail. And because I have that habit, I think because I have that habit, I am able to put words and describe things in, like when I describe things to my client, like just because I'm saying, oh, I'm so good with words, of course I'm losing all of them, but I can put into words exactly what needs to happen in like in a way that makes sense. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, it definitely does make sense. And it was making me think back to what I said at the very beginning of the show, thanking you for the very specific feedback that you had given me so long ago in Animal Training Academy, and how objective that feedback was. You know, it was really specific and objective as well as kind. But that objectivity to me seems to be a skill that you might kind of be talking about now with the drawing as well, kind of honing in on one thing and being able to describe that thing in great detail.
Yeah. Or just like I was talking to, okay, so for example, I was talking to another trainer and we were talking about disengagement, and she had like this kind of basic understanding of disengagement, but she kind of thought that it meant just the dog stopping looking at the thing and then turning to look at her. And we, like, to me, disengagement looks like it's a whole compound of a lot of things that's going on. What I see is often that the dog licks their nose, they exhale sharply, and the ears might flick, and there might be a weight shift that happens before it. So we would look at the dog's hips, because I noticed that the hips would start swaying. That was the first thing with this particular dog. So I was like, look at the hips of the dog. Don't look at the dog's face. Look at the hips. And when they move, that's when you mark. And then the timing got a lot better. So that's the kind of, like, just being really specific and communicating in specifics, really observable things, if that makes sense. I like when it's observable.
Makes total sense. And how can we change anything if it's not observable, right? Or how do we know that we've changed it if it's not observable? Maybe we can, I don't know, but we don't know, right?
Yeah. I think it works really well together with the whole clicker mindset. Like, you have to have something to mark. Otherwise, I have no idea what I'm doing if I don't know what I'm looking for. Like, I can't do, like, but I've never really been very successful just trying normal counter conditioning, as it's often described, because I don't know what's the criteria? Like, what am I looking for? Oh, just feed the dog. Okay, but like, what is he supposed to do? What if he's not eating? I don't know what's going on.
Well, thank you for all of this so far, Josephine. I feel like I could just keep chatting based on the things that we're already talking about here. But I do want to shift to one kind of final question. It looks like we're starting to run a little bit low on time, and I want to shift to one final question to ask you if you could share with us about a training situation that you are either proud of or a training situation that you have found to be reinforcing for you, either one of those.
I think the one that's most reinforcing right now, or I think in general, because it's just such a power trip, honestly, is to have a really good recall on Casper. We have a lot of wildlife here. So we have had a lot of opportunities to train him to orient to me when he sees wildlife. And it's just, again, as with anything, I would just backchain it. So I have a recall where he comes in between my legs, because that's super convenient and I can grab him easily if I need that. But it's also like a really clear finishing point for him. Like, he knows exactly where to go. And I think that helps. I think that helps a lot. But it's just so fun. Like, it's so fun to go and then have the dog just turn on a dime and just go for it, like, straight, like, full speed. He's not supposed to go full speed right now, though. So I'm trying to find ways to slow down his recall, which is, I honestly, I'm not sure how to do that. But it's one of those things that it's a small joy, I guess, or not really. It's something I'm very happy with, to be able to have him reliably come when called. In part because it's something I was never really successful with my other dog, who's not here anymore. It's one of my big, I would say it's kind of a regret that I have. Not really a regret, but it's something that I wish she would have gotten more time off leash, but we just couldn't do that because I couldn't get her to not bother the wildlife. So it's such a nice thing that Casper is able to come when called.
That's a fun behavior to train generally, is recall. And yeah, I'm sure being able to let your dog be off leash and around wildlife and know that they're going to come back to you has to be a very reinforcing, fun thing as well. So thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you for taking the time out of your day, your busy day as a mom and a Casper's human and all of the roles that you have. Thank you for making time to come and chat with us on the Animal Training Academy Making Ripples podcast show today. We really appreciate it. Just before we go, though, could you say one more time for anybody who wants to reach out to you personally, get to know you better, ask you a question, or wants to work with you in your training, how they could get a hold of you?
Yeah, so just shoot me, just message me privately. It's completely fine. Or you could go to my page, which is Djurpedagogen, which will be linked in the description, and I'll answer. And I'll look forward to hearing from you if you want to get in touch.
Well, on behalf of myself and everybody listening to the show today, Josephine, thank you so much for joining us. And we will, of course, like you said, link to all of that in the show notes. This has been a lot of fun for me, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to be with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a ton of fun to get to chat.
We do, of course, appreciate all of you tuning in as well. And if you have enjoyed this episode and are interested in carrying on the conversation about working with the animals in our lives in the most positive, most fun, and most choice-rich ways, then as mentioned at the start of this episode, the Animal Training Academy community is waiting for you. Head on over to www.atamember.com and click on the membership button in the main menu to learn more about what members are describing as the Netflix social media platform for behavior geeks. That's it for this episode, though. Thank you so much for listening. You'll hear from us again soon.